I have a theory about how we can predict the next DLC fighter, and Kazuya just proved it. Let me tell you what it is. Basically, every fighter is put in to please a certain demographic. I've narrowed it down to 5 demographics, and I've done this with data I've gathered from both the first DLC pack and this DLC pack, even though it's currently going on. Importantly, this excludes characters like Piranha Plant, because I don't really think of him as a part of the DLC pack. He was going to be in the game originally, they just didn't have enough time, so he's not really DLC, he's just kinda tacked on. Stay tuned to the end of the video because there I'm going to be trying to make a future DLC pack based on these demographics and rules, and I'll even try to predict the last character in this DLC pack. The first demographic I think Nintendo tries to please when they do this is Nintendo themselves. You can look at this and see it pretty clearly if you're watching the Sakurai Presents, right? An example of a character like this that I think is a Nintendo push is Byleth. People were pretty pissed off when Byleth came out, but it made sense to put her in the game because Smash has been helping out Fire Emblem since the very beginning, and 3 Houses is just the latest in that line. Going all the way back to Smash 4, there's a precedent for them putting in Fire Emblem characters as DLC. Fire Emblem's in-house, so they're gonna have more incentive to push it. Another Nintendo push, ARMS Min Min, right? ARMS didn't sell that well, and it kinda made sense to try to push it with a way more successful franchise. Also, in the presentation itself, you can see that he's talking about the relationships that he has with the ARMS directors a lot. He talks about how the director of ARMS himself made him put Min Min in, because that's the character that he wanted. And he talked about how he talked to the team about why the characters had the ARMS ability themselves. Now, something that's also really important for these demographics is where the character is announced. This really contributes to why I believe in this theory. For Nintendo push characters, they're always revealed in Sakurai Present. This makes sense because the whole reason they're putting these characters in Smash is to broaden the audience of the Nintendo character to the Smash audience. Sakurai Presents are about as focused in on the Smash audience as you can get. In Min Min's case, the fact that the next fighter was going to be an ARMS character was revealed in the Nintendo Direct Mini. Because let's be real, the same kind of people who bought ARMS are the same kind of people who are watching Nintendo Direct Minis, the hardcore Nintendo fans that are pretty much going to eat up anything that Nintendo gives them. Next, I'll cover the Western demographic. These are characters like Banjo-Kazooie and Steve and Alex. Now, a character that's made to please the Western audience is usually made by a Western company, whereas most characters in the game are made by Eastern companies. But we don't get a character like Crash, like when everyone predicts it 50 times, people are like, I don't know why we keep getting characters that aren't Crash, we keep getting characters like Pyra and Mythra or something, they're from a JRPG, how could Nintendo do this again? We know we don't like those, we like little platformers, guys, we like platformers. I think the Western demographic is often mistaken as the demographic by people who live in the Western world. This brings us nicely to our next demographic, which is the Eastern world. For our purposes, it basically just means Japan. This game is a Japanese game, first and foremost, that's then translated into other languages, so it makes sense that it would want to please the country that the game was originally intended for. When I think of Eastern reps, I think of Hero, and I think of Pyra and Mythra. These characters may not be Scrimble or Bimble or the lovable adventure shape from your childhood, but they are characters that people in Japan really do like. Dragon Quest is basically a staple of video games in Japan. Like Dragon Quest 3 is like their Final Fantasy 7, and they had Final Fantasy 7. As for Pyra and Mythra, the game literally sold out in Japan when these characters were announced. And my timeline was blowing up with Japanese tweets as soon as these characters got announced, where every English sheet was like, why are Pyra and Mythra in the game? I'm gonna throw myself out the window. If Sora isn't announced tomorrow. See, the thing is, the Western world, when you live in it, it's kind of the whole world. Right? You can't really understand another language or understand that people might not care about the characters that we care about. For example, Banjo-Kazooie were a huge deal when they got revealed over here, but over there in Japan, it was like, what? Who are these guys? The Scrimblow and Bimblor. Meanwhile, when Hero, the Eastern rep, was revealed, we were like, who's Hero? At least some people were. The thing about the East is that they generally like Nintendo games, so they kind of have a lot of crossover. Seriously, look at the 10 best-selling console games in Japan in 2020, and 9 out of 10 of them are games that are on the Switch. They're kinda like Nintendo games, so some crossover between these two groups are expected. The next group I'd like to focus on is the gaming demographic. Here, they're just trying to please people who play video games, paying respects to both the East and the West. Now you might be asking, why don't they just do this every time? After all, everyone who plays Smash plays other video games, right? Oh my sweet summer child, the fact is there's a lot of losers in this fanbase, lots and lots of losers. Some of them make YouTube videos about Smash Brothers, and some of them just don't play any other video games besides Smash Brothers. Well, they do play games, it's just games that are on phones or games that Markiplier told them to play. You can tell these people apart because they usually will want Freddy Fazbear or the Among Us crewmate in there, or something like that as a little joke. And everyone laughs at it every time and everyone invites them to all the parties. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, the coolest audience, gamers. Can I get a picture of a gamer up, please? Thank you! The characters I associate with the gaming demographic are Joker and Sephiroth. Remember what I said about the location of where the characters were revealed? The characters that are for the gaming public are always revealed at the Game Awards. This way, people who aren't as interested in Nintendo are still brought in by the fact that Nintendo's putting cool characters in Smash. Joker's a relevant character from an RPG that people in America actually liked, and Sephiroth needs no introduction. He's the most popular video game villain besides maybe Bowser. For these video game characters, they have to strike a very delicate balance. After all, they gotta please both the East and the West, and what that usually shakes out to is that the character's from an RPG, but America likes it. Maybe pull a character from before people could say they like the anime out loud, so less people are willing to punch them in the face when they said it, or just pull from a really damn good game. Whatever the case, it makes for good reps. The final demographic I'm going to be talking about is pleasing Sakurai himself. Sakurai at the end of the day is the one who picks off the list that Nintendo gives him, so he has some influence. Some of you might be thinking maybe he'll put in some characters from Kirby or Kid Icarus, those are games that he works on. However, I find this pretty unlikely. Kid Icarus is pretty much dead as a franchise. He confirmed it in a tweet he did. Even if it wasn't, like, what are they going to put in? Magnus? Put your hand up if you know who Magnus is. The relatively small amount of you guys who are putting your hands up right now, both are putting their hands up when a person on YouTube tells you to and have played Kid Icarus Uprising. This should be enough to tell you that Magnus is not getting in the game, despite the desperate pleas of all the Kid Icarus fans out there. Well, what about Kirby? Kirby's not that great either. The thing is, he hasn't worked on Kirby in years. The last game he worked on in Kirby was Amazing Mirror, where he was a creative lead on it. And the last game he directed was Nightmare in Dreamland, and that's just a remake of Adventure, which was way back in the past. The last one he actually worked on as a director, I think, was 64, The Crystal Shards. Think about all the Kirby fighters in Smash Brothers. They're literally all from games before Sakurai left. This is why I don't think Bandai D has much of a chance. Well, he actually was in Superstar, but he didn't have that much of a role, he just was a Megaton Punch. I think Marks had a better chance, but now he's a boss. So maybe like Gooey now? Adelaine, anybody know who Adelaine is? Raise your hand, I'm just tricking you, don't do it. So that leaves us with games that Sakurai actually likes. The gaming public covets this information, but what I can gather is that he likes fighting games. If you can figure it out, that means the characters that Sakurai put in are Terry and Kazuya, who both occupy similar positions in the fighter pass, I'd like to note. Anyway, the way I came to the conclusion that Terry was placed in by Sakurai's wand is because when he was talking about Fatal Fury, his eyes freaking lit up. He says play Fatal Fury Special if you're trying to get into the series, or play 95 of King of Fighters if you want to get into that series, or 98 if you wanted more technical elements. These are details you get when you play and love these games. If he's just shilling a game, he'll just tell you to play the game, that's simple. Not like a King of Fighters or a Fatal Fury was coming out around the time, Sakurai just wanted to put this character in the game. And he didn't even push the most recent release, this was pure passion. And what games do we all really like? The games that we played when we were young. So I'm gonna guess the games that Sakurai played in his youth and he was happy with. I'm gonna prioritize 2D fighting games that would be Japanese arcades in the time of his youth, so like in the 90s. The reason I made this video to begin with is because before Kazuya came out, I was thinking about this theory and the Sakurai needed to be pleased thing. And I was like, what's a fighting game character that was popular in the 90s in Japanese arcades? And I came to the conclusion that maybe it would be Tekken. So like Heihachi or Virtua Fighter, so I was like Akira. But I forgot that Heihachi was actually a Mii Fighter costume already. And Akira is an assist trophy. I also didn't even know who Kazuya was, so there's no way I was going to be able to predict that. Now I'm recording this before Kazuya's presentation is even up, so I don't know if he actually played Tekken. I'm just taking a guess. Please don't leave. But if he did play it, that definitely gives this theory more legs. Now I've went through all the demographics, so I'm going to get to what you've all been waiting for. I'm going to try to use this data to predict future presentations. Now something I withheld from you earlier is that I actually think that one of the characters didn't really fulfill one of its roles, and that character was Steve. Now Steve is a Western developed character, and he probably appeals more to Western fans than he does to Eastern fans. But take a look at this chart again. Minecraft is one of the best selling games in Japan too. It's just a popular game. I think it was an outlier. It was a perfect opportunity for Minecraft to capitalize on the Minecon thing that they were having at the same time. Plus, it's literally the most popular game in the world. It picks up on all the audience that don't really care about video games. This makes the 6 characters make sense, right? The one extra outlier we got was Steve. So I'm gonna think the last character we get is gonna be a Western rap. Now the thing is, Crash has been predicted 50 times. Pretty much every single time that there's a new character in the direct, people assume it's gonna be Crash. If I had to pick a safe character, I would pick Crash. But if I wanted to be bold, I wanted to guess something that not everyone is gonna guess. I'm gonna guess Master Chief. Now the thing is, we don't know if there's gonna be a Challenger Pack 3. Sakurai seems to allude that there's not going to be, but he says that all the time. If there is a Challenger Pack 3, I think Crash is way more likely, or maybe even a character that's not Western. This is going by the balance principle. Well, if there's not the character that you wanted right now, we're gonna get you more characters eventually, so don't complain too much. If there's not a Challenger Pack 3 though, I think Master Chief's chances actually increase because he's gonna want to go out with a bang, I think. Now I'm way more confident about actually predicting a Challenger Pack 3 because it's way more easy to go by the principles. For this I have to find an outlier, kick him out, and then use that one. If any of those are wrong, the whole theory goes out the window. But for DLC Pack 3 I just need to insert a character per demographic. Now gaming is always a hard pick because you have to pick a balance between the East and the West demographics, but I think I found a character that is pretty appealing to both the West and the East, being that it is an RPG after all. But more of an action RPG? I'm talking about Monster Hunter. For the West, I would put in whatever character didn't get in the last slot for this Fighter's Pass, so Crash or Master Chief. But saying that it continued on, I guess it'd be Master Chief. Now for the East, I'm actually pretty proud of this one. I would pick Nahobino from Shin Megami Tensei. I hope I'm saying that right. The reason why I say Nahobino is because a lot of the time the East and Nintendo have a lot of crossover. And Shin Megami Tensei 5 is coming out in November. If they're trying to promote a character or give a character to the East, I would say Nahobino would be a perfect pick. Now for Nintendo, it's much harder because we only really have the Nintendo Direct that we've gone off of. I would think it would be someone who would be later, be introduced later, like from a new IP or something, or prominent character in a new game. Since we don't have anything like that to go off of, I'm gonna guess Andy from Advance Wars or Paper Mario. Paper Mario probably has more of a chance, but it is another Mario slot, so I think Andy would be cooler, but Paper Mario is way more recognizable. Finally, for the Sakurai rep, I'm gonna go with Siegfried from the Soul Calibur. It was kind of hard to get a Sakurai rep because it's hard to get a 2D fighter from the 90s and an arcade who's also a fighting game character, and who hasn't been represented in Smash already. I go to Night Stalkers, but Night Stalkers is way too risque for Smash. But tossing just one of those criteria to the side, Soul Bad Guy from Guilty Gear has a series that's popping right now, and he'd be great. So yeah, that's the video. I hope you liked it. If you did, you could leave a like, or comment down below with who you think would be in Challenger Pack 3, or The Last Fighter. Thanks for watching guys, peace.